Madagascar, an island country located in the Indian Ocean off the coast of South Africa, is the fifth largest island in the world with a landmass of 587,000 square kilometers and a population of 25.6 million. Despite having significant natural resources, Madagascar has one of the highest poverty rates in the world. Before the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, Madagascar was on an upward growth trajectory. After a long period of political instability and economic recession, growth has accelerated over the past 5 years, reaching an estimated 4.8% in 2019, the fastest in more than a decade. This economic recovery has been instrumental in recent elections, as the return to constitutional order and peaceful political transition contributed to restoring investor confidence, reopening access to key export markets, restoring concessional financing flows, and promoting structural reforms. These positive trends are also reflected in improved labor market conditions and declining poverty rates, although it is estimated that around 75% of the population still lives below the international poverty line of $1.90 in 2019, significantly above the regional average of 41%. 9. Liberia. Liberia, Africa's oldest republic, has suffered a series of civil wars between 1989 and 2003. Although peace has now been around longer than war, the per capita GNP is only $667 and the average life expectancy is 63 years. Liberia has also been hit hard by the West African Ebola epidemic. 2014-16 infected 10,675 Liberians and killed 4,809. The pandemic has had a lasting impact on the livelihoods of the survivors. The World Bank's most recent survey of the country in 2016 estimated that around 51% of the population lived below the poverty line. While education is expected to take 10 years, most Liberians complete only 4.7 years of education. The needs are huge and concern has been working to offset the effects of poverty in Liberia for 23 years. 42.5% of Liberians do not have access to clean water wells. And 35.5% of children are within the scope of balanced nutrition programs. In addition, attempts against malaria and gender-based violence are unfortunately high. 8. Mozambique. The former Portuguese colony has abundant arable land and water, and abundant energy and mineral resources. Mozambique is also strategically located, as 4 of its 6 bordering countries are landlocked and depend on it as a conduit for global trade, reporting average GDP growth rates of generally over 7% over the past 10 years. Yet it ranks among the 10 poorest countries in the world, with large segments of the population continuing to live well below the poverty line. While a 15-year civil war ended in 1992, severe climatic conditions, corruption, and political instability never went away. To make matters worse, attacks by Islamic rebel groups have plagued the gas-rich northern part of the country since 2017. More than 4,000 people have died and 600,000 more have been displaced. In the summer of 2020, French company Total SA secured $15.8 billion in financing for a liquefied natural gas plant in the region, the largest ever foreign direct investment in Africa. Many hoped that the project would mark a new beginning. However, due to the escalation of violent attacks in the region and after repeated setbacks, in April 2021 the company announced it would suspend operations indefinitely. 7. Niger. Niger is a vast country located in the heart of the Sahel region. Niger, classified as extremely low income, is facing a triple crisis stemming from the country's security and humanitarian situation, and more recently a health challenge associated with the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19. Its economy is not well diversified and depends primarily on agriculture, which accounts for 40% of its GDP. Despite the significant strides Niger has made over the past decade, the country's extreme poverty rate remained high at 42.9% in 2020, affecting more than 10 million people. Health and safety crises threaten to undermine Niger's progress in terms of economic growth. Real growth fell from 5.9% in 2019 to 0.8% in 2020 due to the pandemic and increasingly violent terrorist attacks. Inflation remained at 3.4% in 2020, driven by supply disruptions and speculative behavior. In terms of the outlook for 2021, the reopening of the border with Nigeria, the resumption of major investment projects, and the normalization of supply chains bodes well for economic return and growth of 4.7%. After a 3% decline in per capita income in 2020, recent gains in tackling poverty are in danger of disappearing, with poverty rising 1.3%. Another 685,000 people have joined the ranks of the extreme poor. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a negative impact on Nigerian households, mainly due to loss of income from layoffs, falling worker wages, and a decline in human capital equipment. School closures are expected to lead to higher dropout rates, especially among girls. The number of people living in extreme poverty is projected to increase by 300,000 in 2021, mainly due to population growth. According to estimates, the country will unfortunately not be able to reduce its poverty rate to pre-COVID-19 levels before the end of 2023. 6. Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. Since gaining independence from Belgium in 1960, Congo has suffered decades of greedy dictatorship, political instability, and constant violence. In 2019, the country turned a page with the election of Félix Antoine Tshisekedi Chilombo, son of legendary opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi, as the new president. His controversial predecessor, Joseph Kabila, who has ruled the country since succeeding his father, who was assassinated in 2001, is best known for ending a conflict commonly referred to as the Great African War that claimed up to 6 million lives as a direct result of fighting or due to disease and malnutrition. However, it did little to improve the lives of war survivors. More than 60% of the country's population of 92 million still live on less than $2 a day. With 80 million hectares of arable land, more than 1,000 minerals and precious metals beneath its surface, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has the potential to become one of the richest African countries, according to the World Bank, and a growth driver for the entire continent. Political instability, rampant corruption, and now the coronavirus pandemic continue to thwart this potential. In addition to these factors, new cases of Ebola have resurfaced less than a year after another outbreak in the northeastern part of the country last February, which killed more than 2,000 people. 5. Malawi. Located in South Africa, Malawi is landlocked, sharing borders with Mozambique, Zambia, and Tanzania. The country's estimated population is 18.6 million in 2019, which is expected to double by 2038. Malawi remains one of the poorest countries in the world despite significant economic and structural reforms to sustain economic growth. The economy is heavily dependent on agriculture, employing around 80% of the population, and is vulnerable to external shocks, particularly climatic shocks. The Malawi Growth and Development Strategy, MGDS, which consists of 5-year plans, guides the development of the country. Building a productive, competitive, and resilient nation, the current MGDS-II will run until 2022 and aims to focus on education, energy, agriculture, health, and tourism. In January 2021, the government launched the Malawi Vision 2063, which aims to transform Malawi into an affluent and self-sufficient industrialized upper-middle-income country. 4. Central African Republic. Not surprisingly, the world's hungriest country is also one of the poorest. In the 2018 Global Hunger Index, GHI, the Central African Republic was the only country whose hunger levels were classified as highly alarming. The link between hunger and poverty is clear here. World Bank estimates for 2008 suggest that 62% of Central Africans live at or below the poverty line, and the UN predicts a life expectancy of just 52.9 years. The country's per capita GNP is $663. The average education expectation of 7.2 years is 4.3 years. Since the beginning of 2013, ethnic and sectarian conflicts in OAC have morphed from a quiet emergency to a complex humanitarian crisis. The conflict has severely affected the livelihoods and living conditions of more than half of the 4.6 million population. It has also forced more than 500,000 citizens to flee to neighboring countries, increasing the number of Central Africans in need of humanitarian assistance by 13% since March 2018. The country also has one of the highest child mortality rates in the world. 3. Somalia. After the civil war and protracted conflicts, Somalia is now one of the poorest countries in the world. This is largely due to the 1991 collapse of the Democratic Republic of Somalia, an event that divided the country. The war began, thousands of native Somalis died. The conflict turned the lives of the Somali people upside down in an instant. Many had to leave their homes to survive. Today, the poverty rate in Somalia is 73%, leaving much of what's left of the nation impoverished and struggling to survive. Due to this poverty, the death rate in Somalia is high. About 70% of Somalia's population is 30 years old or younger. The life expectancy rate is roughly 57 years. This low life expectancy is due to a variety of poverty-related causes, including poor infrastructure, lack of formal access to health care, and problems with sanitation. The destruction wrought by the civil war on the country has resulted in weak infrastructure. Because infrastructure is so weak, access to electricity, clean water, and other essential services varies from household to household and is deprived of one or more. Somalis have to pay for everything by bartering, working, or selling their possessions. This process seriously harms their mental and physical health. The lack of health insurance makes it almost impossible for Somalis to treat these emerging health problems, as many cannot afford private health care. This cycle continues and builds on itself, furthering the poverty situation that Somalia currently faces. Also, there are few jobs for young Somalis as the nation has been plagued by violence over the past 20 years. The result is that 67% of young people in Somalia are unemployed or living without a means of meeting their basic needs. 2. South Sudan. The Republic of South Sudan became the world's newest nation and the 55th country in Africa on the 9th of July 2011. Renewed conflicts in December 2013 and July 2016 have undermined development gains since independence and worsened the humanitarian situation. As a result, South Sudan is caught in a web of fragility, economic stagnation, and instability 10 years after independence. Poverty is everywhere and reinforced by a history of conflict, displacement, and shocks. The signing of the final ceasefire in September 2018, followed by the formation of a unity government in February 2020, has given hope for recovery and peace building. Incidents of conflict decreased significantly in 2019, and some refugees who had previously dispersed in the region were allowed to return. At the same time, the resumption of oil production in oil fields that had previously been closed due to conflict raised hopes for an oil-induced recovery. However, with escalating subnational violence in 2020 and the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic exacerbating an already dire situation, the country risks having these gains reversed. South Sudan is in a serious humanitarian crisis due to the cumulative effects of years of conflict that have destroyed people's livelihoods. Severe acute food shortages persist across the country, with around 6 million, about half the population, facing crisis-level food insecurity, and 1.4 million children under the age of 5 are expected to be de facto malnourished in 2021. Due to the humanitarian crisis, approximately 1.6 million people have been internally displaced and approximately 2.2 million people have been displaced as refugees in 6 neighboring countries, a total of 4 million people. Women and children remain the most affected. 1. Burundi. Burundi, a landlocked country in East Africa, is a low-income economy with 80% of the population working in agriculture. It is a country in the Great Lakes region, bordered by Rwanda to the north, Tanzania to the east, the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west, and Lake Tanganyika to the southwest. It is one of the most densely populated countries in sub-Saharan Africa with 11.6 million people, 50.4%, 2019, of whom are women. Burundi has made significant progress in the quality of education and access to education. Since the introduction of free primary education in 2005, primary education has reached 120.3% in the 2018-2019 school year, with no significant differences between gender or wealth. Burundi has experienced a unique economic situation over the past 6 years, particularly due to the decline in foreign aid that has caused both fiscal and balance of payments difficulties since 2015. To compensate for the loss of external resources, the government vigorously mobilized internal resources, but this was not enough to meet an ever-increasing social demand driven by continued population growth. The shock associated with the COVID-19 pandemic has interrupted the already fragile economic recovery, affecting all macroeconomic accounts.